What's going on YouTube? It is Benjamin. I just walked into the studios on this beautiful summer day. I hope you guys are enjoying the summer. I know I am enjoying the hell out of this, and today I wanna do a video about the mastering I did for a track I made a while back. It is a chill out track and I wanna guide you through some of the essentials, and I got some interesting tips and tricks regarding mastering. I'm gonna jump into that, but let me grab my coffee and I'm good to go. Alright guys, I got my coffee, so we're good to go. We're gonna be walking through the mastering I did for a tune I made a while back. And firstly, I just want to have a look at the renders as waveforms, just to show what is happening with the mix and the master. The mix is very gentle, there's no limiting going on, there's definitely some compression going on. And the master is of course louder, it definitely has a little bit of limiting. But I want to zoom into these peaks just to show how much limiting is actually going on. And it's not a lot, maybe a couple of peaks here and there that actually push up against the zero and limit it a bit. The reason why I want to point this out is because I feel like in chill out music it is important to preserve natural dynamics. You don't want to squash mix, you want everything to, you know, have breathing room. And we should never underestimate how loud of a mix this actually is, you know. So I want to preserve a lot of headroom, make sure that the dynamics stay intact. But at the same time, I also want to create a little bit of loudness. So let's have a listen to the unmastered mix versus the mastered mix. Right, so let's jump to the actual project where I did the mastering, and we'll have a walk through all the elements to see what's really going on. So we are in the mastering project, and the first thing I want to show is this little helpful tool called Spawn. Spawn is a free VST. If you want to get it, check the description. It is a frequency spectrum analyzer tool, and it allows you to have a visual representation of what is happening with all the frequencies in your tune volume-wise. So let me just play a part of my tune and we can see how it visually reacts. It is a reflective tool that I always put on the last slot of my master channel in my mixing projects as well as in my master projects. And it basically has the same spawn as an equalizer from 20 Hz up until 20K. The reason why this is so helpful is because you can visually see how you're creating a balance in your tune. It's good to realize that most sound engineers generally aim for a kind of an even spectrum. This makes sure that your mix reacts well on a variety of speakers and you won't have, for example, an unexpected amount of bass. You know, you might not have a sub installed, so your sub might be peaking like a lot and you won't even notice it, you know. And then when it gets played on an actual sub installation, it might even be like 10 decibels too loud, you know. So it's good to kind of aim for an even spectrum. And next to that, you can really pinpoint annoying frequencies, because if I'm scrolling like this, I can in the top left see the exact hertz I'm at. What I do want to say, this is just like a reflective, helpful tool. It is not something that you should rely on to the fullest. It's a visual representation. The most important thing is still how your audio sounds. You know, you might want to have some dominant highs, you might not want to have that. It depends on the project. Let's go to the next step, which is dynamic compression. So I've opened up the dynamics of Izotope Ozone 7, and this is a multi-band compressor. So it allows you to individually compress a couple of ranges. You have your bass, your low mids, your high mids, and your highs. You can set these areas to preference. So if I isolate my bass and open up Spawn, we can see the bass range that is gonna get compressed. So in this view right here, you can see the actual decibel reduction, and I want to keep it gentle, especially in chill out music, so I aim for a -5 to -6 compression. I want to kind of keep it even throughout these ranges, simply because if you already have a balanced mix, you want to keep the balance intact. I try to go for gentle attack and release settings, and gentle ratios, and gentle decibel reduction. The benefits of compression are definitely that you can kind of glue your mix together a bit, and it will create a perceptual fatness to your sound. So I'm definitely gonna dive further into compression in another tutorial, more in depth, but it's a bigger topic than I want to discuss in this tutorial right now. So yeah, let's check it out before and after applying the dynamics. And one thing I wanted to point out is the perceptual fatness only gets experienced after applying additional volume, because compression naturally lowers the volume of your whole thing. So we are at part 2 of my mastering chain, which is the equalizer native to Ozone 7. And I went for some gentle manipulation here by adding a little bit of high end with a shelf and eliminating a little bit of low mid frequency with a gentle downwards bell curve. And again, I want to emphasize that when you have a balanced mix, you don't want to overcomplicate or overdo any of these processes, because you want to keep the organicness and your balance intact. So I strongly suggest to go for gentle manipulation. You will also notice that typically equalizers meant for mastering react more gentle volume-wise, because they account for the fact that you don't want to go for strong manipulation. I enjoy this equalizer very much. It has of course, the standard functionalities of any equalizers. Here you have a modification field, and additionally, if I play the tune and hold Alt while scrolling, you will see that you can really zoom into frequencies nicely. So this is my third component of the chain, which is the imager of Izotope. And just like the dynamics, you have the 4 bands, and you can set the ranges of these bands, and you can isolate the ranges as well, the bands. So in my case, what I quite often do is I mono up my bass quite a lot, because in my experience this delivers a lot of steady results on a variety of speakers and headphones. Then for the rest of the bands, I go for gentle manipulation, because I already, while mixing, intended my stereo imaging quite a lot. So again, I want to emphasize, when you're mastering and your mix is already good, keep everything really gentle. So let's just isolate the low mids and see what kind of effect it has on the stereo field if you widen it up or make it more mono. You can definitely experiment a lot with this, and you can really get a lot of crazy results. You can make your textures really wide and cinematic. On the other hand, if you're looking for more of a vintage effect, it definitely helps to go for a bit more of a mono experience, because the recordings from back in the day had that kind of quality and character to them. So we are at step 4 of my mastering chain, being the vintage compressor of Izotope Ozone 7. A fairly simple compressor to use with all the essentials you need, and definitely for me a go-to tool when I'm mixing as well. Additionally, it has a couple of modes and also a gain for you to gain the volume of whatever you're compressing. So it has a decibel tracer, so I'm in that particular window right now, so I can view how much is getting reduced off the peaks. In this case, it's barely a decibel getting taken off, and my settings are very gentle. I just wanted to tighten up the mix a bit further. If I set it to smooth, the time it takes for it to climb back to its original volume is way lengthier, so it delivers, in a sense, more organicness. Sharp might work better on dance tracks to get the snappy drums going on. So step 5 is just a internal FL little plugin called the Stereo Enhancer. And let me see, I just made the mix 2% more mono just to create a bit more of a tunnel effect in my mix. It's just an addition to the imaging I already did, so this is just a minor little thing that I did. So right now I feel like it's a good moment to reflect on what has happened to the audio of the mix, so I'm just gonna play a bit of the track without all the steps that we've discussed and then with. Number 6 in my mastering chain is the vintage tape, which emulates tape distortion from back in the day when they simply had a lesser quality of audio. And this is a very good tool if you want to warm up your production, apply some distortion, or go for a vintage effect. So right here we have the tape speed. Setting it lower is basically a lesser quality. The input drive is basically the amount of distortion you put on it. The bias and the harmonic shift the tonality. The low emphasis and the high emphasis emphasize the amount of distortion on the low and high end. So let's check it out without and with the tape distortion to see what it does sound-wise. So I'm just gonna boost the signal quite a bit, emphasize the lows and emphasize the highs. So yeah, this is without. And with. One of the last steps in my mastering chain is this equalizer right here with just one manipulation. It's a gentle upwards bell curve, gaining 0.3 decibels in the mid ranges. By holding Alt and scrolling, I manipulated the amount of reach, so it affects a lot of neighboring frequencies because I wanted a general extra warm energy in the mixdown. So yeah, this was just a gentle manipulation. And finally we have arrived at the last part of my chain, which is limiting, done by the maximizer. And for those who don't know what limiting is, it means that if you have your ceiling, so your 0 here, or in my case minus 0.3 decibels, and your mix wants to go above that, naturally it can't, so it pushes down your whole mix. So if you have a kick that is peaking above the ceiling, it pushes down the kick, but the consequence is that everything in the lower regions get pushed down as well. So this can definitely create negative side effects if not utilized in the right way. Because I already have a lot of compression done while mixing and also while mastering, I just want to boost the signal, the volume of the whole thing without actually limiting too much, because I feel like I create enough loudness just by boosting the signal. So you will just see a little bit of actual limiting going on in my tune. So right here I decide the character of the limiting, so just like a compressor, you can create smoothness or snappiness. So the slower it is, the more open of a attack and release. The faster it is, the more snappy it is, so that could work well on dance tracks. And the final thing I wanted to point out is this new module native to Ozone 7, which is sort of a smart engine, which means that if your mix is limiting, it algorithmically decides over, I think, 40 bands what it's actually gonna dip. So if it is your kick sequence that is causing the limiting, it will rather dip the bass than the high end. So that is kind of revolutionary, and it makes limiting much more easy. And then finally, to conclude, I want to check the unmastered versus the mastered in the frequency spectrum analyzer just to see what has happened to the actual balance aside from the obvious volume difference. Aside from the volume difference, it got a bit more even, and that is mostly because of compression while mastering. I feel like I've achieved the amount of loudness I want with this mix, and also I'm quite happy with how the sound sits. Every mastering process is going to be different from the other one simply because every tune is different. So I advise you to experiment with it and never underestimate how powerful it is to take breaks, because a fresh air is way different than an air that has been in the sound for a couple of hours. So that was it for this walkthrough of mastering a Chillout tune. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and there are definitely topics that I want to dive into more, but I didn't want to jam it all into this video. So we will hit you up with related topics in the near future. Anyone has any questions, ideas, or general remarks, feel free to post them, as we'd love to engage with the community. As always, peace.
Revelation.